Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. I think we've got a nice big bunch of you today. So, thanks for coming. Just to introduce myself, so I'm Nancy Sheterline. I'm a female in her late 30s with pinky brown hair, wearing a colourful shirt for those of you who can't see me. And I'm here today and I'll be talking to you about boosting your campaigns along with my co-host, Sarah, who I'll let introduce herself.
Yeah, my name's Sarah Frost, my pronouns are she, her. And I'm
I can't hear you, Sarah.
Can you not hear me?
Oh yeah, no, there we go. Sorry, it's just a little bit quiet.
That's weird. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good now.
Yeah. Fab. I'll start again. So hello everyone. My name's Sarah Frost. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm Client Insights Lead at Spektrix. I'm a woman in my late 30s with brown bobbed hair and a fringe, which to be honest could probably do with a cut, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt. Just for a bit of context, I started out as an arts marketer but over the last sort of 10 years at Spektrix, I've worked with numerous arts organisations, consulting on their communication strategies and loyalty plans and things like that. I now lead our team of consultants and ensure that we're enabling our clients to put their plans into action by using the tools and data available in their Spektrix systems.
Sarah. So yeah, also a little bit of background on me. So I am a senior consultant at the Audience Agency, but likewise, background is kind of mainly in arts marketing and audience development at various arts organisations and touring organisations. So I have very much stood in your shoes. There are more of us today. We'll be handing over a little bit later to Victoria from Shakespeare North, who'll be giving us a lovely bit of a case study showing what they've been doing over there with this Spektrix enhancement. But yeah, for now, we're going to be looking at really boosting your campaigns and using this kind of audience spectrum enhancement within your Spektrix system. Which some of you may be aware of, but not quite sure how it works. I've noticed others of you on the list aren't currently Spektrix users, so hopefully this will give you a really good insight into the kinds of things that system can do for you. But hopefully we'll be able to provide you with loads of information, and we've got a bit of time at the end for any questions as well. So to move on to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Thanks very much, Megan. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to introduce Megan, who's in the background doing all of this stuff. Sorry about that, Megan. And also, I think I was going to ask you to go through a couple of housekeeping things as well at the beginning of this session.
So yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. My name's Megan. I'm in the marketing and events team at the Audience Agency. I'm a white woman, shoulder-length dark brown hair, and a white shirt today. A couple of very practical things just as we're getting going today. We are recording this session, and we will send that recording out as part of the follow-up to the session. We'll also send out these slides, so don't worry if you don't manage to catch everything. We've got not live captioning, Zoom's automated captioning being used at the moment as well. So you should be able to activate that by using the control bar at the bottom of the screen if that's useful. And if you do have any questions as we go, please do pop them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them all. If we can't get to them, then we'll follow them up after the session with you individually. So that's me. I'm here in the background. Please drop me a message if you need anything. Back to you, Nancy.
Thank you. Sorry, that was all really important stuff, which we nearly completely missed on. Of me. So today's session, we've got an hour and a half for today's session, and during that hour and a half we're going to cover what you can see in front of you right now. So we'll be talking a little bit about what is segmentation, so really just looking at what it is, look at the basics, and why does it matter most importantly. Then we'll be giving you an overview of what audience spectrum is as a segmentation model, bring you to grips with that, and then talking a little bit about how we've integrated that into Spektrix with this audience spectrum enhancement that you can use. And then Sarah will be talking a little bit about how exactly to implement that, what it can be used for and what that will look like in your Spektrix system. After that, we'll be handing over to Victoria to hear about how they've been using this in Shakespeare North and how that's played out. And then following that, we've got a bit of time for questions and wrap up for any questions that you've got. So, I'm sure most of you know us already, but we at the Audience are an independent research and development organisation. So we're a non-profit charity, a research social enterprise, and we work with, I'm sure many of you already, we work with hundreds of organisations across Wales, Scotland, England, and internationally as well. Oh, can I just ask, I think, oh, there we go, lovely. Just to make sure that everybody's got their mics off. Thanks very much. So our kind of specialisms really, and our expertise in the audience agency, audience focused, so audience development. We also do experience design, evaluation, anything that's kind of really helps your kind of strategic planning in a kind of evidence-based way. And audience spectrum is one of our key tools. So we're really excited to kind of have this enhancement within Spektrix, bringing these two great systems together. So I'll hand over to Sarah now to tell us a little bit about Spektrix.
Thank you very much. Sorry, it took me a moment to find my unmute button. Should really be skilled at this by now. So for anyone in the room who doesn't already know us, Spektrix is a team of almost 250 people providing cloud-based technology for your ticketing, marketing and fundraising. We currently work with about 400 organisations in the UK and Ireland, and about 200 across the US and Canada. If you want to find out any more about us, you can head over to spektrix.com. So we work closely with our partners, like the Audience Agency, to provide further value to Spektrix users through integrated solutions that open up even more possibilities for the organisations we work with. We're really delighted to be joining today's webinar with the Audience Agency, and hope you leave today with a good understanding of the value you could derive from making use of the audience spectrum integration. Just to sort of point out that in addition to the Audience Agency, we have an ever-growing number of different types of partners. So to learn more about the range of partners available, you can head over again to the Spektrix website, where you can meet our partners and explore the different types of products you can plug into your Spektrix system.
So some of you might have seen this already. I think we sent out an email yesterday, and I can see that some of you have filled it in. During the session, we're also doing a bit of a Mentimeter, so asking you a couple of questions just to understand a little bit more about how you're already using segmentation, and your familiarities in particular with audience spectrum as well, and also just to understand kind of really what your kind of key objectives are for your marketing campaigns. So I think this is a really interesting exercise, not only to kind of share that information amongst yourselves and understand actually how other people are using these systems and models within their organizations and how that's going, but also at the Audience Agency, we're constantly developing our tools, and we rely on kind of our user feedback, and then understanding a bit more about their priorities to do that. So it's really interesting for us to hear more from you about these things. So if you are able to scan this QR code, you'll be asked those questions. Let us know what your answers are. As I say, I think we've already had a few responses. So I'm just going to take a look at what that looks like so far. Here we go. So hopefully you can see my screen. So in terms of using a form of audience segmentation at the moment, oh, there we go. We've got live answers coming in on screen. Fantastic. So it looks like the majority of you are using segmentation to some degree at the moment. It'd be interesting to know. We're going to talk a little bit more about different types of segmentation in a moment. Some of you aren't, and a large number of you are also sort of beginning to look into it. So that's interesting to see. There's me trying to move the screen along. You can see I'm a regular user of Mentimeter. Here we go. Here we go. Sorry about that. So in terms of your familiarity with audience spectrum as a segmentation model, great to see that some of you are already somewhat familiar. With you, very familiar, wonderful. And the rest of you kind of aware of it. or not at all familiar. So as I say, we're going to go through a little bit more about what that is in some detail. And if any of you do require a bit more further information afterwards, you're always welcome to come in touch, and we'll direct you to some of those resources so you can read more about it as well, if this session doesn't answer all of those questions already for you. And then here's the interesting one. So what are your primary objectives for your marketing campaigns at the moment? Increasing ticket sales, reaching new audiences, seem to be the primary things. So I think, you know, we're all under pressure as arts organisations at the moment, and so that revenue stream is a really key important thing, and I can see that coming through. So that's really useful for us to bear in mind. Right, lovely. So I think we're gonna, if Megan, if you could share the slides again for us. Lovely, thank you. So as we were saying, we're here today to kind of boost our marketing campaigns and learn how to do that. And I think as marketers, we all know that creating marketing campaigns takes time, energy, and money, and we'll want a good return for that. You know, I think we all know kind of hitting everybody with everything is something that works. It you know, it oversaturates our customers with information, and obviously we don't all have the resources to do that anyway. It's not realistic. So the more targeted we can be, the smarter we can work, the better returns we'll get for all of that hard work. So I think, you know, as we were saying, generating those ticket sales and reaching new audiences is a really key priority for most organisations out there at the moment. But also encouraging return visits and increasing spend per head. And these are all things that we can really focus a little bit more on with some targeted approaches to our work. And as an organisation who constantly harp on about the benefits of evidence-led planning and strategic thinking, I'm pleased to say that there's a huge amount of evidence backing this up. So as you can see here, our campaign monitor in 2019 showed that marketers can enjoy return on investment increases of up to 760% when sending targeted, segmented campaigns. Also, there's numerous other kind of bits of evidence for this. So Spektrix Insight reports findings, for example. These show that click rates on segmented emails actually outperform those on unsegmented emails by over 100%. And there's also, if you ever feel like browsing our the Audience Agency website, we've got numerous case studies on there of how people have used this segmentation to better target their audiences and the outcomes that's given them. So I think it's kind of inarguable that a kind of smarter approach works. So it's just figuring out how to do that, really. So what is segmentation and why does it matter? So when we talk about segmentation, we're essentially talking about the process of dividing and organising our audiences into manageable groups or segments. This helps us kind of tailor our offer. We're not trying to hit everyone with the same message. It's a kind of manageable way of doing that within our resources. So in order to make this more manageable, obviously if we were, we all kind of know that contacting people on a very individual basis, if you send information about an event to somebody individually, you're far more likely to get a response and get engagement from that. But practically, that's never going to be something that we're all able to do. Huge data requirements, resource time, all of that make it impossible really for us as marketers. The other end of the spectrum, the kind of approach of mass market, is kind of sending your information to absolutely everybody. But again, that means that engagement is likely to be fairly low. The information isn't likely to be relevant or compelling to them. Again, there's that worry of kind of oversaturation, people receiving too much information. at times where they're not prone to engaging with it. So a segmented approach is kind of a nice middle ground. It's doable, it's manageable, and it allows you to do that kind of tailored messaging in a way that kind of works around the different needs of core groups. There's different ways we can segment. As we saw before, a lot of you are using segmentation already. If we could just flip to the next slide. Wonderful, thank you. So types of segmentation that you do, you might see some of them on here. You might already use those kind of Spektrix attributes to kind of understand exactly to kind of filter your email lists by people who visited recently, or you might be trying to target lapsed visitors, for example, with specific messages, or you might segment already by art form. There are all different kinds of ways you can segment, and you might be using a combination of those things at the moment. Ideally, we want to find a system that kind of works and that isn't too complicated to set up, and that covers kind of all bases in one blow, really, and limits the amount of work that you have to do. And that's really where audience spectrum comes in. So what makes a useful segment? It needs to be important, it needs to be relevant to your goals. So if you have a specific audience development priority, you know you need to be able to segment by with kind of knowledge of that priority within those people. You need to use evidence. So you want your segmentation to be evidence-based. And you want to make sure that the groups of people that you're targeting are big enough to make those activities worthwhile. So you're not spending lots of resources on contacting, you know, 10 or 20 people or so who aren't really going to make a major impact on that revenue stream. Also, you want to make sure that those people are reachable, that you have ways to contact and communicate with them, and that they share enough of the same characteristics to be targeted with the same message. So essentially, strategic segmentation sits at the heart of increasing that impact you can make with your engagement and sales, with staying relevant and getting that relevant information to the right people, with building those meaningful relationships, at whatever stage your relationship currently is with that particular audience group. So on to audience spectrum, which hopefully will deliver against some of those things. So for those of you who aren't aware of it, or a reminder for those of you who are, audience spectrum is essentially a segmentation tool that we developed for the cultural sector specifically. And it segments the whole of the UK population based on their attitudes towards culture, by what they like to see and do. And it can be applied to your own audiences. So we have a number of tools which can help you understand exactly what the makeup of your audience is in terms of audience spectrum, but also the wider population as well. So you can understand actually which groups are out there who you're currently not reaching, but who are living close by or within your catchment area. And as an evidence-based organisation, it's based on real-world large data sets, so we can know that what's being said here, it isn't just kind of a bit of a blind guess just based on supposition. It's really drawn from data that we're constantly gathering and implementing. So audience spectrum segments population based on kind of 4 key themes. So behaviour. So we've got information about the frequency that people might attending things, the kind of programming choices and art forms that they'll go to, how much they're likely to spend, the communications that they're likely to respond best to, and then demographics as well. We'll have a sense of their age, a sense of their life stage, economics, and family circumstance. So whether they are kind of right for family audiences, whether they've got children in the house, or whether at their earlier or later stage of life. Also geography, as I say, it's based on household. So we understand where they're living and the proximity to your organisation. And then also these kind of wider things like attitudes, so motivations, the things that kind of encourage them to go out, whether that be a kind of social driver, whether that be because, you know, they feel like culture is a large part of their identity, or their interests, or other kind of ideological or other kind of cultural attitudes there as well. And as I say, these are all based on data sets. So Audience Spectrum pulls in data from census data, so a lot of that demographic information comes from there. Also kind of wider Experian data sets, which are the same data sets used to create Mosaic, the kind of consumer filing tool. And also kind of live data sets of how people are actually engaging in culture from our audience answers data sets. So we have data feeds set up to box office systems of hundreds of organisations across the UK, so we can understand exactly who's going to what, and link and layer all of these things together to create this model. Audience Spectrum will then hopefully help you to find answers to the kind of key questions, really, which will help drive your marketing campaigns. So firstly, understanding what it actually is that motivates your audiences, what they're looking for from a visit to your organisation, how likely they are to kind of spend on things like membership schemes, VIP experiences, donations, but also, you know, cafe expenditure and things like that, gift shop expenditure. It'll help you understand who you're not reaching, as well as who you're reaching, and crucially, what the kind of barriers to engagement might be for any kind of work that you're doing to kind of widen your engagement. You can kind of make sure that you're removing those barriers. So really brief overview. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are 10 segments in total. 3 kind of highly engaged segments here on the left in red. These are metroculturals, commuter line culture buffs, and experience seekers. You can see a little blurb underneath that gives a rough idea of what each of these segments are. But there's far more information on our website, and we'll go through a few of these in a bit more detail in a moment. In the middle here, we've got dormitory dependables, trips and treats, and home and heritage. These are kind of more medium engaged segments. They're not likely to be attending quite as frequently or as those kind of first 3 groups, but certainly kind of important groups for a large number of organisations. And then on the right here, we've got these 4 groups in blue: Up Our Street, Frontline Families, and Kaleidoscope Creativity, and supported communities. And these are the people in our population in the UK who engage least in cultural activity, but all with kind of different characteristics and different reasons and barriers kind of in the mix there. And so really useful for us to understand. And each of those 10 groups can be further broken down into 2 further sub-segments if you really want to get granular. And this is particularly useful if you're doing a profile of your audiences and you discover that, you know, 50% of them fall into one category, like metroculturals. There's a bit more kind of further segmentation you can do, understanding what differences between different types of metroculturals might be. So the Spektrix enhancement actually does tag your audience members by sub-segment, so you get that level of detail with that enhancement. So just a really brief look at some of those key segments. I think we'll just look at 2 of them today. So commuter line culture buffs is usually quite an important segment for quite a lot of arts organisations. They're a really highly engaged group, and commuter line culture buffs are found all over the UK, unlike metroculturals, for example, who, although they engage a bit more, tend to be based in urban areas, large urban areas as well, mostly London. So commuter line culture buffs tend to be fairly well off, affluent, kind of boomers, a bit more mature, or empty nesters, quite a lot of retired people within that category, very much viewing themselves as cultural beings, as culture vultures, and it's really a strong part of their identity. So they're always on the lookout for things to do, but tend to play it safe with kind of their more traditional cultural offers. So it might be opera, traditional theatre, or classical music and things like that. More kind of known names and examples. On the other end of the spectrum, just looking at one of those less engaged segments, we've got Kaleidoscope Creativity. this tends to be a kind of mixed age, quite an ethnically diverse group, typically in a city living, and yeah, kind of broad age range, like I said, over the age of 35 usually, and often a little bit more financially strained. So that's one of the kind of barriers within this group. Often reliant on public transport, and this group commonly engage in of kind of outdoor arts, so kind of free events that are happening in their communities, and also accessible art forms. So they're a really, really good group to try and bring in through a little bit of strategic programming. So for all of our segments, there's much more information at audience-spectrum.org, but also we've got motivation guides available there as well, which are essentially audience development plans for each of those segments. I think they're any marketer's dream. So do check those out if there are any key segments you'd really like to develop a bit further in your organisation. So onto the audience spectrum enhancement in Spektrix. How have we integrated with Spektrix? So we've essentially worked together to create a tool which updates customer records in your Spektrix system with an individual audience spectrum segment and subsegment. So for every individual within your system, you'll be able to see exactly what category they fall into, and understand this plethora of information about their motivations, attitudes, life stage, things that you couldn't possibly know about them unless you sat down and kind of grilled them in the cafe, without having to do that. So it's a really, really useful tool. It's really easy to set up, and it's completely automated. So new customer records are updated daily, so you can kind of implement things really quick and off the cuff. If you wanted to kind of show emails to people that were in a segmented way, you can do so. So crucially, it allows you to kind of build these customer lists through that email tool by segment, and create really, really targeted marketing campaigns. And we got loads of people using it across the UK already. Here's just a few of them. And as I said earlier, we'll be hearing from some of them. We'll be hearing from Shakespeare North a little bit later about how they're using it. And we've got some nice examples as well from Park Theatre and Nottingham Playhouse in a moment as well, about how they're using it. So you want to use it to build your customer list by segment. You can identify the segment you want to target, having understood exactly who it is within your audience, who it is who actually makes up your audiences. We usually recommend kind of identifying like the 3 core groups that make up the majority of your audience, and you can use those to kind of target what you're doing. Also, you can bear in mind if you've got any audience development objectives within your organisation to widen your engagement with particular groups, you can kind of identify which of the segments those groups are most likely to be within, and use that to kind of engage people who might not be engaging as much as you'd like. You can build your list, use those motivation guides to learn best how to motivate and engage that segment, adapt your content, adapt images, adapt the kind of copy that you're using, and send your campaign. And then also the reporting features within Spektrix will allow you to track, monitor, and adapt process as you go. So it's an iterative process of targeting.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Nancy. We've obviously just heard some great things about how the audience spectrum segments and subsegments are a really powerful tool in your toolbox. But as per Nancy's last slide, I'm actually now going to spend the next few minutes sort of running through how those segments can be accessed and used in your Spektrix system. So obviously, the first thing to always bear in mind is that data is only as good as the questions you ask of it. So what is it that you want to know about your customers? How will you be able to action those insights? Or what decisions will this information help you make? For effective campaigns, you really want to be able to identify and understand your key segments. Spektrix makes accessing your data really easy, and there are multiple ways you can actually access that audience spectrum data from within your Spektrix. The segments are stored as attributes, making them easy to use as search criteria for specific customers or groups of customers, also to report on, and also to use for those targeted communications that we started to hear about. You can also use these populated attributes to understand the number of bookers in each of your sub-segments or segments that might attend specific events, or maybe book during your priority booking, or at specific points in that sales cycle, or potentially who have booked at a specific price point or used a special offer. You can also cross-reference audience spectrum segments against your members and your donors. So you can tell already there's lots that you can be doing with this. So I'm now going to dive into how you can access your audience spectrum data in more detail. And I'm going to be running you through how to look at your segments via customer records. So that's including in your sales interface search and flagging using customer groups. Also going to be looking at custom reports that provide information specifically about the makeup of your database based on these audience spectrum segments. And also how you can use these segments as criteria for other reports, including our suite of powerful standard Spektrix reports that you can then filter to provide insights about your different audiences. So now we're really going to be getting under the hood of how to use the audience spectrum segmentation in practice in Spektrix. And I'd like to call out again that Megan's already mentioned that the slides will be shared after this webinar, so you'll be able to refer back to them. We also do have a comprehensive how-to guides on our support centre, as well as the suite of guides on the audience agency's website on how the integration with Spektrix works and some practical ideas on how to make the most of it. So firstly, you can easily find individuals who fall into a specific segment or subsegment using the customer search in the sales interface. So here you use the advanced search option. And then once you've expanded your search, you can type in the name of the segment or subsegment you're looking for. Oh, Megan, you can click through. Fab. Yeah, so you can do that here in the attribute search. And in this case, you can see I'm wanting to find my metroculturals. Then as you can see here, once I've done my search, I've also set up a customer group in Spektrix admin interface that adds a clearly identifiable box to the customer records based on their segment, flagging these customers as metroculturals. It's worth noting as well that the color is also customizable, so you can match it with the audience spectrum color scheme. Adding this customer group means you can clearly see the customer segment at the point you search for them in the sales or the opportunities interface. And this might perhaps prompt a tailored donation ask, or maybe further recommendations when they're making their booking via your box office. Moving on, we've also created a suite of standardized custom reports that output audience spectrum data to help you understand the makeup of your subsegments in your database. So if you don't already have these reports, but do have the enhancement, please reach out to the Spektrix team so we can add them to your system. I'm going to be running the audience spectrum report with subsegments, which, as you can see, can be run on a variety of criteria sets, including genre, event, and venue. But you can also create your own criteria based on the information that you might be looking for. So I'm going to be running this report by transaction date for the last 12 months. I'm doing this to understand the subsegments of the customer's purchasing tickets in that time period. So to do this, I've included all the subsegments in my criteria. But again, you can pick and choose here. Then, as you can see from this report, it outputs a row for each subsegment, showing the number and percentage of bookers in one, and also the number of tickets booked and the income from those tickets. If we dive in a little bit further, say I'm interested in my top subsegment, I can hone in on the Commuterland Culture Buff C2 and the Dormitory Dependables D1. You can see here come out joint top as the two highest subsegments, both for number of bookers and value of tickets. However, if you're actually wanting to target your top overall segment, you can see that actually the Dormitory Dependables come out as the clear majority segment when they're combined. So once you start to build up a picture of the segments in your database, you can use the data to inform your strategy, for example, where you might want to invest your time or your budget. In this example, the highest value of ticket sales is coming from those Dormitory Dependables. So what are they coming to? How can you keep them engaged? How do you find more of this segment to attend similar shows? These are all questions that you want to be able to answer. You could also choose to run your first-time bookers through this report to build a picture of where the biggest growth in audience numbers might be coming from, and to understand what activities and/or programming are drawing them in. All this rich information is readily available and can be used to inform your campaigns and prioritize your efforts. Then you can also use the audience spectrum segments as criteria in the standard Spektrix reports or any custom reports that you have on your system. For example, this is narrowing down the standard customer behavior analysis report to just look at experience seekers who have bought tickets this year. Once the report's run, you might be interested to understand how far in advance this segment is booking and how this relates to your communication strategy. So in this case, the experience seekers are early bookers. Now, knowing this could prompt you to target them for maybe a membership upsell, where you could highlight priority booking as the key benefit, or it maybe just ensures that you target them earlier in your communication plan. Cross-referencing with the Audience Spectrum's motivations guide can add further richness to the data that you have in Spektrix. In addition to our standard reports, you can also use our customer list builder to find and analyze specific segments and get even more sophisticated with your analysis by combining multiple criteria. So this is where we're going to really drill in. For example, you could look at your regular bookers and donors and run them through the Audience Spectrum report. However, in this example, I'm going to share, I am really going to do some drilling in. So I'm going to be looking for customers who have clicked a link in an integrated email so far this year and combine that with an Audience Spectrum subsegment and booking behavior to find a really highly engaged bookers in the tips and treats subsegment. So on the screen, you can see I'm building a mailing segment here. Hopefully this is familiar to you if you have Spektrix. And when you choose the integrated email option, you'll then get to specify the particular engagement you want to segment on. In this case, I've selected anyone who has received at least one email in the time period and clicked a link in at least one of those integrated email campaigns. So here we have it, the specific subsegment of tips and treats T1, who have clicked a link so far this year and have attended an event in the last 3 years. This generates an incredibly targeted list of 38 customers. To run these customers through a report, you can click on the Choose an Option drop-down and select the report and criteria set. It's also worth noting that you can also use this drop-down to bulk create opportunities or invites if you have the opportunities interface for your fundraising activities. You can also select a one-time integrated email for these particular customers if you're wanting to target this group in your comms campaign, which then segues us nicely onto targeted communications. So to really get the most power out of your audience spectrum integration, you can use the segments to power targeted comms. I think that's what you're all here to hear about. And you can either do this within your standard mass emails using dynamic content or via super targeted automations. I'm going to share some examples of this now. It's also worth noting that we'll be taking a break after this section, and then afterwards we'll be hearing about how some of these things have been put into practice by real life organizations who are putting the enhancement into action. So to unlock the functionality I'll be demonstrating, you'll need to set up auto tags to look for customers with the specific segments or subsegments you've identified as being your target audience or priority, based on all that reporting analysis that you've just carried out. So to set up auto tags based on the relevant attributes, you need to do it in your tag sync list that goes over to .digital. If you don't already have this tag group syncing to .digital, please visit the Spektrix Support Center, which will take you through the simple steps to do this, because that's kind of key to the whole thing. Another little tip is that you ensure you set up naming conventions as segment names as they stand from the audience agency are actually too long to sync to .digital, which has a limit of 16 characters. So for example, you might want to name all of your tags ord_spectrum_ and then specify the unique code you could see when Nancy shared all of those subsegments. Whatever you opt for, try to keep it clear and consistent, as having consistent naming conventions will make it so much easier to do the personalization when you get to .digital. So now moving into .digital, and you can apply those segment tags to your dynamic content in your general email communications, for example, your season launch email or your monthly newsletters, or even your pre and post show emails. To do this, you just click on the variations drop-down in the top left of the content block in your .digital campaign, and select who you would like to apply this variation to. Then just create the specific content you'd like that segment to see. And you can adapt this on all sorts of content, from images, subject line, headlines, calls to action, priority events, and news, to all those different segments that you want to be able to target. Call out a really nice example. Park Theatre actually vary the top picks being promoted to their different audience spectrum segments based on their understanding of those segments and the audience agency's motivations guide. The team at Park Theatre has shared how proud they are of the targeted campaigns and automations they've set up and the success they've seen since taking this approach, especially for getting lapsed bookers back, which has been a really key focus for them. You can then report on the increased engagement you get from tailoring your communications from within .digital's standard campaign report. And within there, you can compare the engagement with different variations of your email. So here you need to click to filter the report. I think it's going to do its little thing. Maybe it's not. Oh, here it comes. Yeah, so you click to filter the report. Oh, maybe my animation's not working. But yeah, you click to filter the report. Then there's an option to select to only show report data for people who have received a specific content block. And then once you select that content block, it will show the variation that you're interested in within the report. So yeah, simple steps. And again, this will be shared afterwards, as I don't think the little video is working. Oh, no, there we go. There we go. But I was going to say, that gives us a quick overview of where you can do that in the standard campaign report. As well as this, you can also run the standard mailing ROI report in Spektrix to see how well the email performed overall in terms of sales and also the performance of specific links. These reports are run from the Insights and Mailings interface and the Mailings page. Once you've sent the mailing, you can open it to see some headline stats, but also run an ROI report. This calculates the ROI by looking at bookings for events in that targeted event section. And don't worry if you forget to add events when you set up the mailing, because you can add them retrospectively. Once you've added target events, the ROI report will look at the bookings made by the email recipients. This top part of the report shows the overall performance of the email with the overall sales figures for those recipients. Then below, the report breaks down the ROI by link. We've actually blurred out the links here, but if you have given them a name in .digital, you'll see it here rather than a URL, making analysis much easier. The ROI report is a great way to check if your emails are fulfilling their biggest engagement, which is obviously a ticket booking, as we saw from your poll at the end of the day, is the increased revenue that we're all looking for. You can also see the links clicked in Spektrix marketing segments in the customer list builder, as I showed you earlier. And obviously these can be used to filter customers who have clicked a certain link in a campaign. It's worth noting that having that friendly link name when you set it up in .digital makes them easier to use in that customer list builder as well. It's also worth noting that there are further improvements coming to ROI reporting as part of our overall integration improvements with .digital this year. As an extra consideration, if you'd like to be able to directly track engagement and sales through your website as a result of clicking a specific link and a dynamic content block, then you can set up a UTM tracking link. Oh, sorry, my screen went a bit weird. A UTM tracking link for Google Tag Manager, which is basically the extra bit of code added to the URL that enables Google to track activity and or purchases on your website after the specific link has been clicked in the email. Then the final super powerful option I'd like to demo is how to target online advertising to specific segments and lookalike audiences to those segments. I'm going to be using Facebook in this example, but the same applies for Google and for TikTok. To do this, all you need to do is set up a very simple .digital program as shown on the screen. So basically what happens here, I'll talk you through it, is everyone enters your program as the has audience spectrum point. The first node is then looking for anyone with a specific tag, which you will have set up using the audience spectrum segment. And in this case, it's looking for M1. If they have that tag, then they get added to a custom audience in Facebook. If not, then they move down to the next node. And in this case, it's looking for anyone who has the tag M2, and this can continue. You can do this for as many of your segments or subsegments in one program as you'd like if you're planning to do multiple different ads. So essentially, what's happening here is this program creates lists in Facebook that you can do what you like with from within Facebook ads. So you could include those M1 customers in a specific Facebook ad campaign, or equally, you might want to exclude them, or even use that list to find lookalikes. We've got lots of templated programs available in your .digital account, including a birthday message program and a follow-up campaign for first-time bookers. All you need to do for these templates is add your email campaign design, and within that, you can also tailor for audience spectrum segments in the ways I've already outlined. So there's loads of info on Spektrix Support Centre to help you get this set up. And of course, you can reach out to our team of Spektrix experts if you'd like to discuss anything that you've seen here today. I think we're now going to take a 3-minute break before we dive back into some case studies from organisations who are using the audience spectrum enhancement for their campaigns, including hearing from Victoria at Shakespeare North Playhouse, which I can't wait to hear about. So I think see everyone back here in 3 minutes. I don't know if Audience Agency will have anything to add.
No, just, yeah, see you back in 3. Go grab a glass of water or a cup of tea. Hello. I think most of you are back in the room or hopefully on your way. So I will continue with the show. So thanks very much, Sarah. I think it's always so useful to see a kind of practical application as well as the kind of why and how you should be doing it. And I think that really brings home certainly those kind of park theatre examples, really useful, I think, in actually showing how it can be done and what it would look like. So essentially, yeah, just to recap, I think what Sarah showed us there was exactly this slide that we saw earlier. It's a case of identifying that segment that you want to target, or 2 or 3 segments that you want to target, building those lists, getting those set up. So, you know, it's one of those things, I think, where putting a day aside in your diary for getting something set up correctly pays off in the end, hopefully giving you loads of free time in future. That's always the dream, isn't it? And then using those audience agency resources, those motivation guides and information on our website to learn best how to motivate and engage that segment. So making some choices about the images that you use, making choices about the kinds of things that you're flagging to different kinds of people. And I think that digital advertising thing as well was a really interesting point to make, and not one that we kind of always think to recommend. But yeah, it can be kind of integrated in all different kinds of ways into your kind of marketing campaigns. And then the reporting element. So I think that tracking and monitoring is almost as important as the first thing, you know, getting that thing set up in the first place. It's making sure that actually it is paying off for you, and understanding exactly how. I think there's always a really useful thing about having evidence that you can use internally with other members, other departments within your organisation to kind of advocate for the work you're doing, and the financial resources you might be spending on a certain tool, if you can show that it's delivering beyond expectations or really increasing that ROI. And it also that monitoring just allows you to adapt, so you can set up those kind of automated reports and just check in on whether what you were planning for to happen is actually happening with your audiences. So I'm just going to give a couple of examples now. I know we saw the park theatres examples of that content, dynamic content between different segments that were of importance to them. But we've got, I think the long-term plan is to create some slides like this for all of our segments, and have a bit more of a resource base on our website. So we're just trialing it at the moment for this session. But just a bit of guidance really on if you have got a kind of key segment, if commuter line culture buffs is one of the ones that you really want to be targeting in your organisation, and we're using this as an example because it tends to be one of the key ones for most organisations, tends to make quite a large proportion of most people's audiences. These are some kind of top tips on the different ways that you might want to present information and the kinds of information that you might want to present in your email campaigns for that specific segment, without saving you the job of kind of reading all of the content online, really. So Firstly, the things that they like, they do tend to have kind of broad tastes, tend to lean towards classical and heritage, as I mentioned earlier. It's really useful to kind of highlight the social opportunity of what you're doing. So if you've got a bar, if you've got a cafe, you know, that's worth a mention, and a way of kind of increasing a bit of spend per head as well with that particular customer base. And that self-improvement element as well. So I think if you can show people, and this might be through the images you use or the copy, that there is a kind of learning opportunity here, that you'll come out of this a kind of enriched person in some way. That's always a really useful thing to be able to include, and will certainly engage. You know, they know their stuff as well. I think culture is a regular part of their lives, so you know, that they do tend to be experts on the particular kind of art forms that they are interested in. And in terms of that kind of messaging, just making sure that you've got kind of clear customer journeys, that you're promoting kind of less risky areas of your program is a really useful thing to do. And then in terms of the kind of product, again, skill heritage things in your program are the best things to flag. Use images and copy that really convey a sense of quality, so they're getting a high quality experience at your venue. Highlight those established names that they will have heard of, and the companies that they consider themselves followers of. And also they'll kind of trust your opinion, I think, as an expert in the sector. So I think, you know, being able to provide recommendations, this is one of the groups that I think will follow those recommendations. So again, that kind of, if you liked this thing, you'll probably like this thing coming up next month. That's always a good route to go down with commuter line culture buffs. Then obviously that kind of vital info for them is how to book, make it really easy. Might not be particularly savvy, so make it really easy for them to do. Highlight the kind of parking and travel, highlight any age guidance, and upsell with this group. They're an affluent group, or more so than some of those other groups. So this is a real opportunity to upsell for donations. You know, get your fundraising campaigns over to them, and really highlight those kind of pre-post show events. You know, restaurant deals you have and things like that. Yeah, get them buying those add-ons really. And looking at one of those groups that can be slightly more difficult to engage, Kaleidoscope Creativity. If this is one of the key groups you're looking to attract, then make sure you're highlighting that kind of community-based content, family-friendly content going on at your venue, and additionally, kind of ideally, the kind of low price range, if not free, because they won't be thinking of themselves as cultural people. Your venue might be somewhere that they don't kind of feel immediately comfortable and familiar in. So it's really enticing them over with stuff that feels like a really good time out, day out for free, really. So motivating them will be things like spending time with their children and doing something fun and family focused and inexpensive that's on their doorstep. You know, highlight that things are free. It's interesting, we did a project with the local gallery recently that does loads of family friendly events, and is free to enter and always has been, and is really well established. It's been there for 30 years. And when we did some non-visitor research, it turned out that 80% of the people in, living within the catchment area had no idea it was free to enter and had been for 30 years. So don't make assumptions that people know these things. Is always really important to know. And focus on accessibility element as well, so that people, you know, there aren't any barriers to people attending. And then, like we were saying, in terms of those kind of products that you're going to be pushing their way, focus on those community-based things. So and outdoor arts. You know, it might be personalities that are well known in that area, that come from the area. Live music and things like that. You know, I think summer's a really great time to engage this group as well, obviously, because it just does tend to be the season for kind of free outdoor festivals, doesn't it? In terms of images and copy, it's that welcoming aspect. So convey a sense of this place is welcoming for me. Make sure your images have lots of pictures of people that make sure you're representing them in those pictures as well, so that people feel comfortable, familiar, and that it's a place that's welcoming for them. And try to kind of steer clear of that arts jargon as well, because that tends to be off-putting for this group. And just really highlight that kind of free or low-cost price, and the location and the proximity really to them, if possible. And any add-ons might be things like if you've got a nice welcoming bar or cafe, or any offers that are going on in your bar and cafe to kind of make a day of it. Or any kind of associated free learning opportunities, ways to kind of get a bit of added value out of their day with you. Right. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass over now to the lovely Victoria from Shakespeare North, who's been putting some of this into action. So can probably tell you a lot more about it than we can, we're just spinning the theory. So it'll be really wonderful to hear a little bit more from her about what's been going on in Shakespeare North.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. There we go. Hi, I'm Victoria, or Vicky, Head of Audiences at Shakespeare North Playhouse. So I am a female, white female in their mid-30s. I have long brown hair, and today I am wearing a leopard print top. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how we use audience spectrum as a catalyst and a tool for our audience development strategy. So Shakespeare North Playhouse, if anyone doesn't know, is based in Prescott. We are just under 3 years old, so we're going to celebrate our 3rd birthday in July. And we are the first arts organisation venue in Knowsley. So there's been other arts organisations, but they've never had an arts venue. Prescott is within the top 2 most deprived areas in the country. So we've got a very specific purpose of being built for regeneration and culture for change. So many social impact objectives that we have to deliver on, but also, like everyone else, I think in the room, huge revenue targets alongside that. So it's always about giving them both equal importance. So for us, why did we start using audience segmentation and the audience spectrum? Well, as a new organisation, we needed to align our efforts so we were all working towards the same goals. What we found that everyone came in and we were all on the same page with why we wanted to work at Shakespeare North, but we were all doing different things to try and get there. So every new project was a new starting point for audiences. Every project was, loads of projects were aimed at social impact, but then where was the revenue coming from? So it was a space to talk about challenges for each department and start becoming a data-led organisation, so we weren't always working on assumption. So what we decided to do was bring together a regular working group, and this will have representation from all departments and all levels. So it wasn't just the marketing team or an audiences team, it was absolutely everyone: programming, front of house, fundraising, and there is representation from everyone in there. And we booked in some meetings that were every 6 weeks, so it didn't feel too overwhelming, but we made sure they were in the diary. And where we started was we got everyone in a room and we asked them what audience development and audiences meant to them. What was the golden thread of why we were all here? What were we all trying to achieve? And how could we create a language and an understanding where we were all on the same page and there wasn't that friction between, well, I programmed this because it's for this audience, but we don't have that audience in our database. But what even is that audience? We're talking about people in their 30s. And it was kind of, how do we get a language where we're talking a little bit more specifically, but all on the same page and all working towards the same golden thread of being here for regeneration. So we then started by looking at those assumptions, because I think everybody has assumptions. They are sometimes right, sometimes really far off, but we all go to them as our comfort place, and not everyone loves data. Not everyone is a data-led person or feels they can understand it or visualize it. So we asked everybody to bring their own assumptions on a particular project, and then we matched it against the data to start challenging people in their ways of thinking and going, well, you assumed that, but the reality was this. And sometimes they were right, and sometimes we were very far off. And I think it really helped us understand what we'd done over the last couple of years and what projects had delivered in terms of audiences. So we then looked at all the data tools that we do have, and I think everyone's probably in the same boat. There are lots of them. There is so much raw data. Even as a mid-scale organisation without a data team, we have all this raw data, but what do you do with it? And you can dip into each bit, you know, here, there and everywhere. My team who are doing the campaigns, lead on the campaigns, they can often go, oh, we can look at the feedback from there, or we can do this, or we can pull that. And we needed to find something that brought that all together so that we weren't flitting from place to place, and we could have a really nice structured approach to who are we targeting, why are we targeting, and what are we targeting them with. So we basically began with audiences at the heart of everything. And data can often be a really challenging subject in an organisation where you have a lot of empaths, creative people who want to talk about people's emotions and behaviours and feelings towards work and programme and what they get from it in a more, in a less tangible way of we've had X people from X postcode of X age come in. And I think the audience agency's audience spectrum, segmentation, when it is only a spectrum, I always get those words all muddled up, is really useful because it allows everybody in the organisation to talk with a similar language and to feel like they understand and to feel like they can visualise a person that they're programming for, targeting, or wanting to talk to. So that's where we started. And the audience agency came in and gave us a wonderful workshop to help everybody understand audience segmentation, to help us look at it in such a broad, with such a broad lens. Like, what is the population segmentation in our immediate area versus our database? Because for us, there's no blueprint. We've not been here for 10, 15, 20 years. We've literally done 2.5. So it's really hard to pull on anything from anybody else. There's no venue similar to us in the area. The area is very unique in terms of its population segmentation. So where do we start, really? And the audience agency really helped us with that. And we've been tagging our data, and this is what it showed us. So that core don't ignore is something that we have really lent into, and it's the revenue generation. And it's really hard in an organisation that has so many social impact objectives, which are so important and so valuable. But there is also that flip side of generating revenue, and we can't ever let that slip. So this was our way of, as a marketing team, of going, you need to help us here, because this core don't ignore is exactly where we're going to generate our revenue and where we need to put a lot of time, effort and resource. What we also found, and that for us is dormitory dependables, trips and treats. We focus more on the dormitory dependables. The opportunity is all of those frontline families within a 30-minute drive time, which we are just not targeting at the moment. We're not programming for them. We're not reaching out to them in any specific ways within our campaigns. And there are a lot of them. And that is a huge opportunity for us. So that's where we're going to develop our audiences that can also possibly generate revenue, but just get them in. That's who we're here for, those frontline families. And then when we look really closely at the L34 postcode data, which is Prescott, really, really tight Prescott data, supported communities are particularly high in the population segmentation. And that is our why. That is our unique point as to why we're here, what we've been put here to do and deliver. And all our social objective work really sort of feeds into that supported communities area. And we know that that is the least engaged segment in all the segments. We know it's hard work, but that's where our engagement work comes in. And that's where we can focus really heavily. All of that engagement work, social impact, and it allows us across the teams to say, which area are we targeting at the moment? Which, these 3 core strands for us at this moment in time, why are we targeting them? How are we targeting them? so that we don't focus all our work, which we'd love to focus absolutely everything on supported communities and deliver so much for the community here. But the flip side is we have to generate revenue. And sometimes that is one of the most difficult conversations to have across an organization, when you've got programmers and engagement teams who are so passionate about delivering for local community, which we all are, but then you've really got to generate some revenue. So you've got to get some of those dormitory dependables in. The audience agency have been brilliant. There's so many free tools. We don't have a big budget. I don't think many people have big budgets to spend loads of money on everything. And we tag our data and we lean into all of those free tools, and the entire organization leans into those free tools. And the entire organization outside of the audiences team has been to tea breaks, has looked at the motivation guides, has read through the audience development plan, because for me, even though I have the title head of audiences, I'm not the only one responsible for audiences. Audiences are the responsibility of an entire organization, and an entire organization should put audiences at the heart of all their decisions. And this is something that's been a really sort of key factor in doing this workshop process as a team. So once we've got our population segmentation, we've started to look at what that means much more specifically in terms of SMART objectives, and we can become a lot more detailed. And I would say, again, I think I keep saying it, but it's not just about ticket transactions and sales. This audience spectrum for us feeds into what's the creative, what are we programming, what's our educational offer, what's our experiential offer, what's our social offer, our the financial offer in terms of what's free, what can we charge a bit more for, how can we dynamically price based off audience segmentation and who those products are aimed at. And then we're going to start moving into using the population segmentation to create SMART objectives. There's just a few examples there that we're playing about with. What we're asking is that every department brings multiple SMART objectives, and then we can distill them down as a group into what we want to focus on for the next 3 years. And then we can move on to what's the 3 years after that, and so on and so forth. And then the metrics, Spektrix, as you can see, is going to come in very useful when we want to start saying, this is what we've delivered and how and why. And for us, it's a shared language, not only within the organisation, but for board reports. It really helps you do a show-by-show benchmarking exercise against how the segments are growing, why they're growing. And then you can also benchmark it against population data. So that means for us, when we're talking to the council, we can say, well, we know that our population is X and we're delivering X for X. And then within that, our database can start reflecting who is outside of our walls. And our next step is to do a shared action plan, because we're going to write it all down, have action owners, and the team are going to use all of those wonderful tools that we've just been shown by Spektrix to integrate it into Digital. It means that they have a really clear language with programmers as well. So when a programming colleague might be saying, can you just target X? They can go, which segment is that? Why are we doing that? Who is that for? So it just starts becoming this shared language and understanding, which hopefully, I would hope, eliminates some of the friction between I'm doing this for this and I'm doing this for this, even though we've all got the same goal. So yeah, to summarize everything, we hope that it will achieve a shared language, a shared responsibility, and a clear correlation between our day-to-day operations and our broader impact, and how we talk about that and the social impact we have on our communities. Yeah, so do I hand back to you now, Nancy?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, yes, please. Thank you so much, Victoria. That was an absolutely excellent case study. I think it's so heartening when you see someone take a tool like this and run with it and create this thing, which is clearly kind of driving a real sense of purpose across the organisation, and really helping you do a really good job of what you're doing. And yeah, I think I've written loads of notes, but I won't go through. Oh, here we go. So yeah, just to say, I think you made some really, really good points, which I think we hadn't perhaps made a little bit earlier. I think that bringing together of the kind of data heads in the organization, along with the kind of more creatively and people-focused people, because obviously any organization needs kind of both of those things to make it work well. And I think that's where Audience Spectrum, I like to think of it as a really kind of human-centered approach to segmentation. So while it's based on all of those data sets, and we know that it's kind of evidence-led in terms of how it's built, it really looks at kind of essentially, you know, who we are as people and why we make the choices that we do, and what motivates us to do that, and how that kind of plays out in terms of our behaviors of attendance and things. So I think it's that real nice kind of tether of data to reality and human nature, which hopefully will be really useful for anyone using it. Anyway, enough about that. So we have got a couple more case studies here. I think some of these are already up as case studies on our website, or soon will be. So I won't spend too much time because it'd be really great to hear if anyone's got any questions. But really briefly, just to say, in terms of kind of approaches of using this particular enhancement tool, Nottingham Playhouse have done a really good job as well. So again, I think it's taking that same thread that Victoria was talking about really kind of embedding it as a language across the organisation and doing and using it as a real driver to kind of bring everybody onto the same page in terms of audience aims in an organisation. So Nottingham Playhouse approached us to kind of help them with that journey, and as a result, we kind of created a number of kind of resources for them internally. So guides all based on the kind of segments that they particularly wanted to work with, to support them. So kind of reference documents for various teams, giving them the information they needed at their fingertips to help them embed it in this way, but also really based on their local area. So we use quite a lot of population data as well to understand actually where they can be targeting, and how those kind of targeted emails and targeted approaches to campaigns could really play out, if taking in that kind of geographical information as well. So the full case study was presented at the Ticketing Professionals Conference, which I think was last month. Chris was there, I'm not sure. But I'm sure some of you went along to that and heard about that anyway. And then the final case study, just to mention really briefly, was we just wanted to mention, if kind of bums on seats and marketing isn't the kind of main priority in terms of using it, it doesn't have to be the main priority. We're actually working with Circa Media in a kind of pilot project between Circa Media, ourselves, and Spektrix, and we're exploring actually how best to use this in terms of individual giving. So really, you know, implementing this across fundraising campaigns. There's a lot of data within those segments and subsegments about the kind of prospecting, and the kinds of resources that different people within your audiences are willing to give, whether that's kind of time and energy, money, support, advocacy, and so on. So we'll talk a bit more about that later in the year, when we've got some kind of results from the work we've been doing, but that's just one to keep an eye on as well. So I think at this point, I think Megan's going to pop back very briefly before the end just to tell us how to set this up and how you can get started if you're interested in getting this set up in your system. But before we do that, has anyone got any questions about anything we've talked about today? I know we've had a few in the chat as we've gone, which I think have been answered. If you want to just pop it in the chat. Yes, so Lisa, yes, all the presentations will be shared, and I believe, yeah, I think Shakespeare North's slides will be included in that. We'll embed those into the slides and make sure you have a copy of those as well for reference. I always think, what do they say? Borrowing ideas is the biggest form of flattery, isn't it? So I think as marketers, we've got to help each other out and borrow the good ideas here and there. And I've just seen, Georgia, your question about getting the recording. I'll need to check whether we've...
Yes, we will.
Yes, there we go. Thank you.
Wonderful. So don't worry if you've missed anything. There's a lot of content.
Lovely. So in terms of knowing if you are set up already, I think we do have a couple of people on this call who probably know if you're already set up. They kind of handle those lists. I am not one of those. However, I think if a predecessor has set it up, it's possible that it's running without you knowing. Maybe pop us an email afterwards, and we can check and get back to you on that. But likely you will have been aware of it. There is a cost associated with setting it up. So if you're not paying for it, you might not have it set up already. On which note then, maybe Megan, would you like to talk a little bit more about the next steps for people who want to get started?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Nancy. So yeah, hopefully everything that you've heard today has been interesting, useful, sparked some sort of interest in going and pursuing something else. We've talked a lot about the audience spectrum enhancement in Spektrix, and a lot of people have asked some questions as we've been going about how does that actually work very practically? How do I get to set that up? This sounds brilliant. Love it when people say it sounds brilliant. That's very heartening. It's really straightforward. Obviously, step one is making sure that we have got that initial connection between your Spektrix system and our audience answers. Many of you here will already be set up with that. If you're not, that's a sort of step one process that we can go through. It's straightforward. It's a case of filling in some forms and giving us some information. Then we together walk through that process of getting that set up. That will then give you access to an audience answers dashboard, which is kind of like step one, entry level, and it will give you that overview of your sales, the audience spectrum profile of your bookers. You can compare sales trends for different time periods. That'll give you kind of a way into audience answers as a dashboard. If you don't know too much about audience answers, it's a slightly different. We've not really touched on it much today. It's a slightly different service, but we do run some introductory sessions for that as well. So we can follow up that with you and just give you a bit of a tour of the dashboard and what's there. So once we've got that kind of step one setup in place, we would then need to add this additional enhancement to your system, both sides, your Spektrix and audience answers, so that you can then start seeing those customer attributes pulling through into Spektrix and your own Spektrix system, as Sarah was demonstrating earlier. Again, it's really straightforward. There is a cost attached to it. It's a scaled cost depending on how many records that you've got. So first of all, get in touch with us and ask for a quote on what that cost might look like. And we do try to make it as affordable as possible and as manageable as possible. And that's then for a year's subscription to this service. So it will update every day for a year whilst that subscription is live with us. At the end of that year, you can renew and keep it going for another year. The actual practical setup is quite straightforward. We just need to create a little connection. We call it an API connection between the two systems. We just need a little bit of help from you to do that, but it's really minimal, I promise. Even I understand how it works. So, that's saying something. It genuinely is quite straightforward. And then there's a little bit of process of testing. So once we've kind of switched it on and we started applying all of those audience spectrum segments to your customer records, what we'll do is we'll ask you to just randomly check a few of them and make sure that it's appearing as it should do and there's nothing untoward and it's doing what we'd expect. And then that's it, you're off and you're good to go, and you're good to then begin building those lists as Sarah showed, doing that kind of sophisticated reporting and targeting that we've been talking about. So I think number one is to, if this sounds like something you're interested in, we will send you some information after this session as well, but it's really a conversation with us. It's that conversation about how to, about what the cost might be in your particular organisation's context and the kind of process of setup. And then we pass you on to our lovely setup team who will get you up and running. So yeah, if that sounds like it's something you're interested in, look out for some information for us, but please do kind of come to us as well. It's fine, answers@theaudienceagency.org. It's just us. We'll get back to you as soon as we can and help get you set up. So yeah, that's really it from me. I don't know if Nancy, Sarah, you had any last bits you wanted to wrap up today's session on?
speaking for myself, I think we've covered everything, unless anybody else has any other questions, really. I think it always takes a little bit of time to absorb it and think. I always come up with questions 20 minutes after I've left a meeting, usually. So if you're like me, please, as Megan says, get in touch with us, drop us an email or give us a call. We're always happy to chat. And likewise, I think, you know, if your organisation is, you know, looking at starting something or is in a period of transition of beginning to look at different ways of approaching your audience development and your marketing, you know, it might be a good time to get in touch. We can also provide advice on kind of that wider embedding this, or, you know, embedding these kind of segmentation tools throughout your organization, and how to bring people on board, and all the different kind of methodologies that we've used to support many organizations over the years in doing that, really. Yeah, we're always on hand for advice, really. Just get in touch.
And it includes the, Vicky mentioned it in her presentation about Shakespeare North, we can come and do workshops with your team as well. We always like to get out and about. So if that's something that you think would be useful, taking a workshop about embedding audience spectrum or the principles of audience spectrum across your team, then again, give us a shout. We can usually make something work quite readily.
Great. There we go. So I think unless Sarah has anything to add, we're
Nothing more from me. Just thank you so much for having me join your webinar.
No, thanks. It's always really exciting. I was really excited to do the Spektrix partnership. It's always good to work with you.
Great. As we wrap up, there will be a little pop-up feedback form, because we love a feedback form. We love a survey the audience agency. Please do let us know what you thought of the event. If there's anything you want to pick up with us, you can leave your details there, and we'll get in touch. But from me, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Victoria. You're all fabulous. Thank you. And look forward to speaking to everyone soon.
Great. Thanks very much for coming, everyone.